and TRICARE. Call now to schedule an appointment at 646-8881. That's 646-8881. Or stop by the clinic today on Ipa Road in Tamuning. At the Seventh-day Adventist Guam Clinic, your health is our mission.
Welcome to Be Renewed. This show shares tips and inspiration for mental wellness, but it's not a substitute for professional care. If you need help, please reach out to a licensed professional. You may submit your question for our show by calling, texting, or WhatsApping 671-686-9999. Your questions will be anonymous. We will not use your name to protect your identity. Now, here's your host for Be Renewed, mental health provider, Shion Shironishi.
Well, good afternoon to you. Welcome to our second episode of Be Renewed. Our title for today is When People Disagree, the Path to Healthy Conflict. And here you are with Dr. Shion Shironishi.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the show. And I'm excited that you're joining us. And this show the purpose is to build healthier hearts, stronger relationships, and wiser ways to live together and to be happy. And so, you already see with the title, we're going to talk about healthy conflict resolution. And it's so important to know how to do this, to have a healthy relationship and healthy mental health. And so I hope you guys stay tuned and see what you could learn about how to improve your relationship by learning how to have healthy conflict resolution. And we all face conflicts every day, conflict at home, at work, and friendships, and even at church, we have conflicts. And so we all need to learn how to do this in a healthy way. And it's weird I'm saying this because you're like, wait, are you saying that it's okay to have conflicts? Yes, it's okay to have conflicts because conflict is allowing two different people to come together and to understand each other better. And we all are different in our ways, and our opinions are different, and we need to come together and to understand and work together. And so, the question should not be about how do I avoid conflict, but how do I handle conflict in a healthy way? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. And so we want to start talking about what is simply the things that we need to keep in mind, what conflict is about, and how do we handle it, and what should be on our mind during a conflict. And so one of the first thing I'll say is we got to seek to understand, but not to win, okay? When we get into these conflicts, our goal seems to be like, I need to win this. I need to be the strong one. But actually, the purpose of it is to seek understanding. The goal is not to come out on top, but to truly hear the other person and try to understand that person. And so, you ask questions like, can you help me see it from your side? Or what are you feeling right now? I just want to know, how are you feeling, your emotions? This approach will transform the conflict from a battle into a bridge for connection. So we're not trying to go into battle and win the battle. It's about creating a bridge to connect. That's the purpose of healthy conflict. And second, we should have in mind to protect the dignity of the both people. We got to protect the dignity of both people. So no matter how passionate the disagreement becomes, healthy conflict refuses to attack the person, okay? We need to refuse to bring them down, to criticize, to yell at them, or using demeaning languages only to just your purpose of hurting them. And we need to not have that kind of purpose when it comes to conflict, protecting their dignity. And by protecting their dignity, we gotta speak truthfully, but respectfully. and using words that acknowledge their worth. And even when you disagree with them, we gotta still use words to show them that, hey, you have worth and value. I love you. I care about you. And it says, I value as a person even if I cannot agree with your perspective. And I know this is hard. It's not easy to do this, but that is a healthy conflict. And third, to keep in mind, is to move toward a solution rather than punishment. We want to, come up with a solution. So unhealthy conflict often gets stuck in blaming and retribution. Healthy conflict, it looks to go forward, to move forward, to have a better way of maybe approaching the relationship, to improve it. Instead of asking, how can I make you pay for this? It asks us, how can I fix this? You want to fix it. You're not out to get revenge. You want to fix it. And the aim is to repair the relationship and solve the problem, creating a path for healing and growth rather than lingering resentment. And so these are 3 things that will help you to keep in mind during these conflicts to have a good result. And if you're not in conflict right now, you could recall the conflicts that you've been in. Maybe it didn't turn out well. And the reason is probably because you didn't have these 3 things in your mind. And I know I could speak for my experience, especially often when I'm counseling people in my appointments with patients, it's often about marriages. And I could talk about my own marriage, and obviously conflicts, disagreements arises. And if I don't have these 3 things on my mind, it ends up not going well. But it's not too late. You could always bring these back to your mind and approach that other person again and try to make it work again. And it's a constant learning. I'm still learning how to do this. So we can never be perfect at it, but at least we could get better at it. And that's the goal. And so keep those 3 things in mind. If you want to know it again, I'm just going to tell you really quickly. First, remember that healthy conflict seeks understanding, not winning. Okay. And then second, it is to remember to protect the dignity of both people. And then third, move towards a solution rather than punishment. You're not in this to punish the other person. And so it feels like many people, grow up learning that conflict means someone must lose. I don't know if you guys ever thought of that, but it's almost like that's what I grew up is if you get into a argument, disagreement, you got to prove that you're right. But healthy relationships are not about wars. Again, not going into battles. Healthy conflict, you say, we are on the same team. We look at each other as enemies when we get into these conflicts, but we got to say we're on the same team. And this is a concept that my wife and use quite often. I would say she actually uses it for me more often. When she brings up maybe some problem that's going on in our relationship, in our marriage, I get so defensive, right? And I wanna prove her wrong and say, no, I'm not like that. But she always reminds me, hey, we're on the same team. I'm here to help you. I want our marriage to flourish, to work, and to be beautiful. And, when she says that to me, it really softens my heart. And it reminds me, why am I getting heated? She's on the same team as me. And so you don't want to get heated on your same team member. If you're playing sports and you're not going to get angry at your own team member. I know it happens. I used to play ice hockey. You do sometimes get mad at your team members, but it doesn't help. We got to work together and to have a winning strategy. And so search for a solution together. And sometimes it's good to just ask a bunch of questions. I keep bringing this up a lot, and you're going to hear this constantly from me when I do these talk shows. It's good to ask questions. Honestly, that is what I do all day is ask questions. And so ask, what will make this better? What will make this situation better? And what is fair? It's not one-sided. What is fair? And what can I do differently? Not just what can the other person do differently, but what can I do differently? And so some of those questions you could really ask yourself. And so let's talk about communication. Most conflicts are not caused by the original problem. And you think it is, but it's actually not the original problem. And they are caused by misunderstanding, hidden expectations, or unspoken emotions. And so here are 3 communication principles that you want to keep in mind. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper. But one of the things is speak about the problem, not the person. Okay? You got to really state what is the problem and not to focus so much on that person. Avoid statements that attack character. Instead of saying, you never listen, try saying, hey, I feel hurt. When I don't feel hurt, it really hurts my feeling. See, notice the difference. One creates defense and the other invites dialogue. Okay, so when you're saying you, it's a very attacking word, and we want to avoid saying that and state what is that emotion that you're feeling? What is that you felt? Because maybe it is something that they did, but you're not just focusing on them, but saying, hey, I felt this. And define the problem clearly. Say what exactly is hurting, when did it start, and how can we fix it? There's a little bit of repetition in what I'm saying, but I'm doing this for a purpose. I want you to understand these key words, key concepts and principles. And so the second for these communication during conflicts, use I statements, okay? Use I statements. So I feel, I need, I am struggling when. This keeps the conversation centered on experience rather than accusation. Again, you're not using the word you, but you're saying I. Okay, so it's good to try to start off that conversation by saying, I felt this way. Now, can the other person still feel attacked if you use the word I? Yes, it can happen. It's sometimes not avoidable, but you can try your best and start from you of not accusing them, and by using the word I and expressing the problem, the feelings that you're feeling. So we're going to come back and continue on with the steps to take, the principles to remember about healthy communication in a conflict situation.
This is Be Renewed, the show for anyone ready to refresh their mind, heal relationships, and embrace life fully. There's more to come, so please stay tuned. We welcome your anonymous questions by phone, text, or WhatsApp at 671-686-9999.
There is joy in believing, satisfaction in contentment, peace in trusting. The source is found deep in the heart of Jesus. His love is overwhelming. His forgiveness is freeing. His promises have always been fulfilled. He cares when you hurt, responds to your needs, seeks you until you want to be found. Discover Jesus and experience a whole new world. Joy FM, family-friendly radio.
This is Be Renewed. Here we combine practical guidance with your anonymous questions by call, text, or WhatsApp to 671-686-9999. Now back to the show with Shion Shironishi.
All right, so we're going to come back to the key principles to remember when you're communicating during a conflict. So the third one is listen to understand, not to respond. And so some of you, and I should say some of us, because I do this too, are ready to attack and quick to respond. And we got to remember some scriptures here, okay? So James 1, chapter 1, verses 19 to 20 says, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, not to speak, quick to listen, slow to speak, not fast to speak, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. And so God says, hey, if you want to prevent, I don't know about you, but I don't like getting angry. It's not a good feeling at all. And I'm sure you feel the same way. So if you don't want to get angry during conflicts and these type of situations, you want to be slow to speak, and you want to be quick to listen. The key is to listen. If you took a communication class, that's one of the first things they tell you is you got to listen. And even in my counseling classes, that's the first thing they say is make sure you take your time to listen to your patient. And there's a reason for that. If you just fast forward and you're just like, okay, let's get to the point, you're going to miss out on so many information that you might have needed to gain a better understanding. And so make sure you listen, and make sure you are not preparing to counter argument while you're listening. It's not the time to think about, okay, how am I going to talk back to this person? How am I going to, win this conflict? But it's time to understand, trying to make sense of what they're saying. Healthy listening means you can summarize the other person's point before you reply. So you can even ask, did I understand you correctly? You could state what they just said, repeat it and say, did I understand what you said correctly? Is this what you are feeling? That type of question, and to be able to summarize what they just said, really emphasizes to them that, wow, this person cares. This person is listening. And it helps them to actually emotionally regulate and to be able to not get so angry. And each person should have these uninterrupted time to speak. So it's not just about you listening, but also the other person should listen to you also. So set a rule when you get into these conflicts and you want to have a healthy ending, a good ending to this conflict, make sure you set a rule saying no interrupting when one person is speaking. Such a great rule to have. And so let's be honest, conflict is rarely just intellectual. It is very emotional. As you go back to that scripture in James, it says to be slow to become angry. And we know that emotion rises. And one thing for you to understand for yourself why these anger arises is it's a survival mode. It's a survival mode for your brain to think of ways to survive this conflict. And, you may feel different things, not just anger, but fear, shame, rejection, frustration. And so these emotions are revealing that you're on a survival mode. You're like, I cannot lose this. And it comes down to is you don't want to lose your worth and value. Whatever they're pointing out, whatever they're saying, you're thinking, I am losing my worth and value, and I need to fight for it. I got to survive. The thing is, though, it's impossible for you to lose your worth and value because God has given to us already from the beginning, actually even before you were created. And he knew that you were going to be created even before you were in your mother's womb. And so that shows us that we have worth and value. You cannot lose it. And there's nothing to fight for it when we have God telling us that. And if you could really keep that in mind, it would really help you to regulate your emotion. And Ephesians 4:26 to 27, it says here, in your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. See, being angry it's normal. It's part of our emotion. It's not sin to feel angry, but what might come after you get angry, that could be a problem. What you might say, you might use profound language, you might hurt the person, that is sin. And so that's why in this scripture it says, don't let the devil use this anger to make you sin and to pause when you're feeling overwhelmed with the survival mode of anger is the best thing you could do. Just pause, take a deep breath, walk away. When my wife and I maybe get in a heated discussion, we say, hey, let's take a break for a bit. Maybe that's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes. I don't know what that looks like for you, but usually maybe for us, maybe 30 minutes. And we go into our separate rooms. We spend time thinking about what we just talked about and maybe pray. And then we come back together when we're calmer and we're able to regulate our emotion and have a decent conversation. And so during the pause, just remember, breathe slowly, pray or reflect. If faith is part of your life, I do encourage it. God is there to help you. So pray and ask God to help you and ask, what do I truly want here? Very important question. What do I really want to happen next? And if I ask myself that question in those moments with these conflicts with my wife, I say, I want our marriage to be healthier and to be beautiful and to be able to love my wife and to be a great husband to her. Those are the things that start to come to my mind when I slow down. And that's why it encourages me to say, you know what? I want to understand her better. I actually want to apologize to her to even make her feel this way and to come to a solution together. And so that's why it's so important to take a step back and breathe slowly, take a moment. So you're needing that time to reflect and to think it through. And so maybe some scenario might be helpful to understand better of how to have this healthy conflict. So imagine this. You just walked into the kitchen and your roommate left dirty dishes piled everywhere. And you feel your blood pressure rising. And so you grab a glass of water and step into your room and you take 20 minutes to cool down. You remind yourself, I want to fix this, not fight. I don't want to fight my roommate. And once your heart slows, you're ready to talk without yelling. And so you realize, maybe at that moment when you slow down, you realize the dishes are irritating, but the real problem is feeling disrespected after agreement to share chores. So you had a conversation in the past and you agreed to do the chores. So the real problem isn't that the dishes are dirty and things like that, but you just feel disrespected. And you're understanding now what is that problem of the situation. And by asking yourself, what is exactly hurting here? And when did this start? You start to uncover the deeper issue, and which is the unmet expectation, not just that dirty plates. And if you're very clear, so the difference is if you go and tell the roommate, you need to clean it, the plates are dirty, and that the focus so much goes into the dirty plate that you don't get to that real problem, which was about unmet expectation. Hey, we had an agreement, but it doesn't seem like the agreement's being placed, and you're not respecting it. And so later, maybe after you have time to reflect, you start that conversation. You go up to the roommate, say, hey, can we talk? Do you have a moment? Make sure it's the right timing too. I tell everyone these are some things to think about when is the right timing to talk about conflicts. And so there's a simple acronym, HALT. HALT, stop. If you notice any of these things within yourself or the other person, you want to halt and stop and not have that serious conversation, which halt is hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. If you know any of these things are going on, it's in yourself or the other person, it's not the best time to talk. So you want to approach them and say, hey, is this a good time to talk? And if it is, you want to start by saying in a calm way, hey, I feel frustrated when I see dishes left out because it feels like our agreement isn't being followed. So you give your roommate time. After that, you give your roommate time to explain and listen to your roommate without interrupting, and keep focus on the problem. Don't go outside of that problem, and don't go straight into that person. But the problem is that you felt like the agreement isn't being followed. And then you finally ask, hey, what will make this better for both of us? How can we find a solution together? It's often, and this is an important step, I know I mentioned this before, but the solution part is so important, because when you come to this conflict, you start blaming each other, and then you say, so what now? So in this situation, let's say I come to the roommate and say, you didn't clean the dishes, and we had this agreement, period. Okay, so what now? And that's the what now part gets very annoying and irritating, and that's where the other person may start fight back. The roommate might fight back. And so we want to come up with a solution. What can we do to fix this? And that solution can help to bring peace and comfort that, hey, we're going to work on this together and we're going to figure this out. And so finally, you ask that question, what would make this better for both of us? Maybe the scenario is they suggested setting a dish timer, and you agree to remind each other without blame. Together, you just move forward from irritation to a clear solution that respects both sides. And I think that's the best solution for sure. You could think of other ways too, but the best way is, hey, I forget sometimes, so remind me, tell me. Sometimes people just want to be reminded. I think I like the concept of even like putting chores, checklists on the refrigerator, and so we know, hey, I did it today, so you check it off. And that makes each of you aware of who did or didn't do. And so the accountability is quite helpful in this situation. And I really think that these conflicts can be avoided if you follow some of these steps that I'm telling you. And as you could tell, maybe you've been in a scenario like what I just mentioned right now, and you said, yeah, it didn't go well. But you see now, hey, this is a healthy way to go about it. And maybe it would have been a different outcome if I followed this method. And so try this out, try to practice it. I think that, like I told you earlier, it does take a lot of practice to do this. So if you need to, practice with friends or your loved ones, do scenarios. It'll be really helpful. So when we come back, we're going to do another scenario, and maybe we could use a marriage example. So stay tuned.
You're listening to Be Renewed with Shion Shironishi. Your questions are welcome at 671-686-9999. The show continues in just a moment, so don't go anywhere.
The Seventh-day Adventist Guam Eye Clinic has an optician and an optical laboratory to make high-quality glasses. They have high-end fashionable frames as well as affordable choices to meet your needs. They accept Select Care, Stay Well, Net Care, and TRICARE insurances. Stop by the clinic today on 388 Epao Road in Tamuning and make your selection, or call 646-8881. At the Seventh-day Adventist Guam Clinic, your health is their mission.
Hey there, and welcome back to Be Renewed. Together, we're exploring ways to renew your mind, strengthen your heart, and live more fully every day. We'd love to know if you have a comment or question at 671-686-9999. Here's your host, Shion Shironishi.
All right, so we're going to go into another scenario now about conflict, and we're going to use a marriage example. So imagine this. Your spouse comes home late 3 nights in a row without a text. You feel that familiar sting of being unimportant. You start feeling, doesn't my spouse care about me and to let me know that I'm going to be late? And it's not just been one night. It's been 2 nights. But it's 3 nights. And maybe you've been there before, and you start that frustration or sadness, whatever emotion starts to rise up. And so this is a healthy way to go about it. So instead of snapping or making a sarcastic comment, you take a short walk to cool down, and you remind yourself, I want to fix this, not fight. I don't want to fight my spouse. I want to help to solve this problem. So identify that real hurt. Ask yourself question, what exactly is bothering me? Is it the lateness or feeling neglected? Those are the questions to ask. And you realize at that moment that deeper issue is feeling like you're not a priority, not just a time on the clock. And so now you're not just focusing on you keep coming in late. You keep coming in late. No, it's about, hey, I just don't feel like you prioritize me. And so share your feelings calmly. So when you're ready, and reminder, when the other person's ready too, not just yourself, when the other person's ready, do you say something like, hey, can we talk? I just have something to really say about how, things been going. Is it a good time? And if the person says yes, and say, hey, I feel hurt when I don't hear from you because it makes me think I'm not a priority. Notice this, and it's going back to my earlier principles, but you're using I statements to keep the focus on the problem, not attacking the person. So what will be a wrong approach, just to remind you, is saying, you keep coming home late, and you make me feel like I'm not the priority. See, there's a difference. That whole using the word you is so attacking. But with the I, you're just really stating the problem. How are you feeling? And can you see and understand how I feel? And then so listen and to understand next is a key point, because you don't want to just express, but you also want to practice listening. So give your spouse a chance to explain why this occurred. And maybe they may say, hey, I was swamped with work and I just didn't realize how much impact this had on you, that I didn't text you that I was going to be late. I just figured you would know that I'm just swamped at work. And maybe, you just didn't want to bother, or the spouse didn't want to bother you. And so now you have a clear understanding, hey, the spouse isn't intentionally trying to hurt you or trying to say you're not the priority, but was so busy, just really didn't cross his or her mind to text you or to call you to say, hey, I'm going to be late. And so now you have a better understanding, you're listening, and now you got to solve it together, come up with a solution. So you both agree to send a quick message. Hey, okay, next time, could you just send me a message? That's it. Just tell me. You don't have to give me a full explanation of why you're late. Just if you could just message, say, hey, I'm going to be late tonight, just letting you know. And that will be helpful. And so you come to agreement to do that. And that small change, you're thinking, well, that's not a big deal. I could do a text. I mean, why is that a big deal? You realize that small change will prevent further and future resentment, and it will restore that connection. Now you have the understanding, simple fix can change everything. So, some of you guys are probably thinking that same, I could text my spouse in those kind of situations. That's not a big deal. But yet, sometimes we don't even get to that solution because you get so stuck on, well, hey, you might say like, well, hey, I'm the breadwinner of this house and I'm working so hard and you're complaining that I'm coming in late. I mean, I do so much for you. See, when you go in that route, now you're just making the problem bigger than it has to be, when you just had that small, tiny change to make, and it would have been a simple fix, and you could have avoided all that fighting and yelling and argument. And so that's the part that we're trying to avoid. And the part that I do want you to realize is these small changes can make a huge difference. And you realize that when you just slow down, just reflect, and give time to think through what is happening in this situation. And so what happens, you might say, hey, I have this conflict and with the coworker, spouse, or, a friend. Let's say a situation and you say, hey, what if the conflict doesn't get resolved? There's a conflict that I'm in right now that's not getting resolved. It's been ongoing for a long time. What should I do? Well, and you can honestly say that you practice the healthy way of conflict resolution, then yes, and you're like, it hasn't resolved. What should I do? I would say go to the scripture in Matthew 18:15-17. And it says here, if your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. Okay? And then if they listen to you, you have won them over. So it's awesome if they hear you out and if they change their ways, that's great. But if they will not listen, take one or two others along. So you want to bring your friends. Now, you want to bring your trusted friends or a mentor. Sometimes I've been in a situation and I've asked my pastor, I've asked my mentor, I asked, someone I could trust to come with me. And someone that will also not be like, oh, I'm on Shion's side. It's someone that will be neutral and try to view it from an outside perspective and to give a good solution or help you to at least get to a good solution. And then if they still refuse, you brought a friend, you brought a mentor, a pastor, and if they still refuse to listen, then the Bible says to tell it to the church. And then the church will help to decide what's the next best step to take. And so this is a very simple steps that God has given to us, and we don't take these simple steps. Even the first step, it's usually hard for us to do. Jesus gives a clear pathway for addressing these unresolved conflict. And it says, first go privately. And this preserves the dignity and minimizes gossiping. Because what happens usually when there's a conflict, and I'm guilty of this too. I've done it before, where if there's a conflict, you get so frustrated and you end up wanting to tell your friends. And you say, hey, you know what? Can you believe that friend of ours did this to me? And I just cannot believe it. And now this gossiping starts, and without even going to that person privately, sometimes this gossiping, the story that you share now spreads. And this, I don't know if you noticed, but the story changes, or new facts comes in, or new story comes in, or, it changes the whole thing, and it gets bigger than what it is, actually. And so we want to avoid that. We want to avoid that by going to the person directly who you have a conflict with privately. And if that fails, again, bring a neutral witness, not someone that's like, I got your back, man. I'm going to fight for you. No, someone that's coming in to say, okay, I'll listen to you, and I'll listen to the other person and help you guys come to a solution. And if the conflict persists, it says church and Matthew, but, this is your community. Your community your support group can come and be your support. And often I do this, I encourage my patients to speak to that person they are having conflict with privately. But if they are struggling and the other person's not listening, I usually tell them, hey, bring the other person and I could counsel you both. And so I practice this in my practice, and it does work really well if you follow these steps. And when we follow this process, we do honor God's design for peace and protect the relationship He has entrusted us with. So, He wants us to have a good relationship with every single one of us, and He wants to us to express His love to each other. And so we need to really follow these steps to prevent any hurts or pain on each other. And it's a hard step. It really is, because since, childhood, we're not taught this. Even in our family, this doesn't happen. I feel like I've never been taught this before, of healthy conflict in my family. And it's not their fault. I'm not trying to blame my parents, but they also probably were not taught also how to have healthy conflict resolution. And so this is, important to even have this in the family, in the family system. We need to have these healthy communication and not just, keep our mouths shut or, hey, you got to be strong and, just deal with it. Those things is the reason why people fall into depression and anxiety. And that's what I'm trying to help you avoid. We want to prevent it. And God actually written so many things in the Bible of how to have these healthy conflict resolution, healthy communication that would prevent these things from happening. And so we really could practice it first with our family, with our friends, with our coworkers, and our church members. And I definitely have myself been in both sides, and I had to work on it. I had to learn from it. And I've had moments where it really hurt, talking about the whole not going to the person privately. I've had a person that really was offended by me for something that I did, and the person took it really hard. I personally wasn't intentionally trying to hurt that person, but I guess that's what it ended up seeming or feeling. And that person ended up telling the whole church. And the whole church found out, and the story became bigger than what it was. And it seemed like she was making me out to be like a villain, an evil person out to get not just her, but other people. And thankfully, the person, the pastor who she made a report to, really knew me as a person and also practiced Matthew chapter 18. And he decided to come to me one-to-one and privately say, hey, what's going on? I heard this. I want to hear from you. When that pastor did that for me, I was like amazed and so thankful because he was ready to listen to me. He was ready to hear me out and wanted to have a healthy conflict resolution. And instead of just listening to that person that was making false accusation. And I was very thankful for that. I learned that from him. And from that day onward, I really try my best to not gossip or try to go to other person, but really try to address it with that specific person with the issue. And just letting you know, sometimes you may not resolve it, like that person that I had conflict with in this story. I still haven't had a resolution, and that was many, many, many years ago. And it's just a fact that not everyone you're going to be able to resolve conflicts with, and you're going to have to be okay with that. You could say, I've tried.
You're listening to Be Renewed with Shion Shironishi.
Might not work
Your
out,
questions
so
are
I'll be
welcome
coming
at
back.
671-686-9999. The show continues in just a moment, so stay with us. Today's programming is brought to you in part by Paradise Smiles Dental Clinic, owned and operated by Dr. William C. Hightower II. Dr. Hightower offers general dentistry services to the people of Guam. They welcome new patients and accept most major insurances, including Select Care, Take Care, Net Care, Stay Well, MetLife, United Concordia, TRICARE, Delta Dental, HDS, Cigna, Medicaid, and MIP. Paradise Smiles is located in Tamuning on Governor Carlos Camacho Road, near the Oka Paylist. Reach them by phone at 671-646-2010. We shall never know all the good a simple smile can do. Now back to Be Renewed, the show that helps you refresh your mind, strengthen your relationships, and live with purpose. Have a question? Call, text, or WhatsApp your anonymous question at 671-686-9999. Here's your host, Shion Shironishi.
All right, so we want to get to the biggest barrier to having these healthy conflict resolution. And I would say simply one word: pride. Pride says I must be right, and I know what's right, and I'm not going to let it go. I'm not going to look like I'm a weak person. I'm going to be strong. And this pride is what gets us in trouble in these situations. But if you could get wisdom from the Bible and let God teach us about how to have healthy relationship, wisdom will say, I must seek what is right. God is showing us the right way to have a relationship. And this right way is the way to true happiness, true peace. And the thing that you will say is, I want to seek out what is right. I want to do what is right in this situation, not I must be right. And so choosing peace sometimes means being willing to apologize first, even if you believe you are only partially wrong. And so if you were going back to that story I was telling earlier, I did actually apologize to that person. I did throw my pride down because I could have been like, you know what? What you're spreading is a false accusation, and I could have just yelled at her and defended myself. But I decided after that pastor came to me and was able to show me a healthy way for conflict resolution, I decided that, hey, I need God's love to soften my heart and to throw away my pride and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for how I made you feel. That was not my intention, but it doesn't change the fact that I made you feel this way. So I am sorry. And, even if I apologized, and sometimes often some of you might think, okay, I apologize, then it could fix everything. But no, like I said earlier, I apologize, but the other person did not accept it. And instead, she stayed angry with me, and I believe probably till this day, she might be still angry at me. But I did try my best to apologize, and you know what? If they are not going to accept it, this is where you got to draw the line and say, all right, I'm trying, but if you're not accepting it, then I'm going to let it go. And we just go separate ways. And this is hard. With friends, you could do this. With coworkers, you could do this. With church members, you could do this. But the one person that's probably hard to do that with is your spouse. And the spouse part is different. It is really a commitment that we made in marriage to say, hey, I want to do what's right as a husband. I want to do what's right as a wife. And you're not marrying that person to say, what can this person do for me? But what can I do for that person? One example we notice for sure is it says in the Bible, husbands, love your wife as Christ loves the church. And so Christ loved us. He never said, what can these people do for me? And if they do this for me, then I'll show them love. No, before all that, he showed us love. And he said, what can I do for this person? And that's the approach that we need to take as a spouse. We made a commitment. You're a team. And so we need to come up with a solution and work on it together. There's no choice in that separation. Is there that choice? Hypothetically, yes, there's that choice. You can make that choice, but we're trying to do what God wants us to do. And God wants marriage to work out. He wants to see two people who've decided to love each other, to commit to each other, to make it work. And so if you're that married couple going through a conflict, I want to encourage you, God can help you. And you can find so many wisdom from the Bible. I share some today, and I know that it can be helpful for you. So don't stop searching for that wisdom. And if you are searching for other places like books, self-help books, and so marriage books, there's so many things out there. But the best book that you could ever pick up is the Bible. The Bible will teach you all about what you need to know for marriage. I could definitely testify for that because my wife and I, we use the Bible to help our marriage to flourish. And every night we try to spend time together, reading the Bible together, have devotion together, and talk about our marriage. And, it's funny because I'm a mental health provider and you would think I'm good at talking and communicating, but my wife is way better than I am. And I love listening to her. She, tells me things while I'm reading the scriptures or the devotion of the evening. She has a lot of comments to make and questions to ask. And it really helps me to stimulate my brain and reflect. And I know we're sometimes tired. The tiredness could get between our spouse and ourselves. But, it's something that we need to take our time and to communicate and to get to know each other and ask each other questions and reflect. It really helps. And to find that wisdom in the Bible to help to improve the relationship. And again, not just for marriage, but the Bible has many things to say about friendships, about your relationship with your coworkers and church members and everyone else, and especially family members. And so, let me ask you 3 questions today. So take a moment to reflect on these questions. Number 1, is there someone you need to understand better? Is there someone that maybe you're just like, I just don't get him, I don't get her, and we have this conflict, and maybe you just need to have a better understanding? And the second question is there a conversation you have been avoiding? Is there a conversation that you're just like, I just don't want to have? I know it's going to be uncomfortable, and I know there's somewhere inside of me telling me that, hey, you got to go to that person and state the problem and conflict that you're having, but you're trying to avoid it. And so maybe you need to think about, do you have a conversation that you haven't avoided? And maybe you need to have that conversation. Number 3, is pride keeping you from making peace? Is there pride in you so full that there's no room for peace? That's a sad thing. And your heart cannot be filled with grace of God. Grace is what brings us humility and willing to forgive and willing to love and to work things out. And if your heart is full of pride, there's no room for grace, and peace cannot come. And so ask yourself, is pride keeping me from making peace? And so healthy relationships are built on one honest conversation at a time. And so first conversation you might have to have is with yourself, or most importantly, God. You could say this to God too. Hey, God, is there a conflict that I need to resolve and I've been avoiding? Is pride getting in the way? Can you teach me? Those are the conversations you could first have, is with God, and God is willing to show you all the things that you need to know. Everything that you desire, everything that you wish to know, He will provide it for you. I could definitely guarantee you that for sure. I definitely, whenever I get into conflicts or a problem that comes up, the first thing I try to do and remember to do is to pray. Pray and ask God for wisdom. And I could honestly say that majority of the time, I've got an answer. There's moments you may not get an answer. It's hard. We all want answers. And an example will be that question that I asked you, the first one, is there someone you need to understand better? There are some people that you just never going to understand why they are the way they are. And you're just working so hard to try to figure it out, and you keep talking to them, be like, why you like this, things like that. But you may never know. And it's okay. And maybe God is telling you, you just need to have space from that person. Often this is seen in dating world, and you have these conflict in person that you're dating, and the person is not committed to you, and you're trying to figure out, hey, why are they being like this? We need to resolve it. But it's better if it's not working out and the person's giving you a hard time to just walk away, because sometimes you're just not going to have an understanding fully what's happening, but just to know that that's not a healthy relationship. And in the future, we're going to do a show on healthy boundary. And so when you tune into that, you'll get to know more about when is the right time to walk away. When is the right time to say no to people? And so I hope you keep coming back to these Monday shows and you'll run into a topic, healthy boundary. But remember this, conflict is not the enemy. I just want you to remember that. Conflict is not the enemy. Uncontrolled anger is, misunderstanding is, and pride is. But when handled with wisdom, conflict can actually deepen trust and grow relationships. And conflicts is the reason why I have better marriage. I have good friendships with some of my best friends. And, it does help our relationship to grow. And so peace is not absence of disagreement. Just because you don't have these disagreement, that's not what it means. Peace is the presence of love, humility, and understanding even when we disagree. And so don't, be discouraged because of a conflict or a disagreement you're having. That's not what determines true happiness. It actually is how you go about it that will bring that peace, that presence of love, humility, and understanding. And so try to remember these concepts, try to remember these principles, and you'll see that your relationship's going to grow and flourish like you've never seen before. And then it's going to surprise you. And you'll say probably, this is what I used to say was, man, I just took small, simple steps and it helped quite a bit. I didn't realize that it was simply just practicing these principles that can help. And you don't want to just ignore this. You want to take it into your heart and practice it every single day. Don't be consistent. Don't just do it sometimes here, sometimes there. You want to be really consistent with this for every relationship that you have, not just the certain people, but to everybody. And this can quite help you to grow even in your own character. And so, I'm very thankful of learning this, and it really taught me quite a bit, and I'm still learning, like I said earlier. And I hope that you will continue to dive into this and keep learning. And remember, you can find all this wisdom from the Bible. And so thank you for joining us today. And until next time, choose peace, speak truth in love, and guard your heart.
That's it for today's Be Renewed. Remember, this show offers guidance and inspiration, not professional mental health care. If you need help, please consult a licensed professional. Thanks for listening, and please join us again next week at this same time.
You've heard the phrase, when you come to the end of your rope, tie a knot and hang on. That's great for a sense of perseverance and endurance, but it misses a bigger point. You don't need to get to the end of your rope before you take action. If you notice a downward trend, ask for help. God's always standing by, ready to be His amazing self. It could be that what you're hearing right now is the reminder you need. You know the sense of desperation that leaves you chasing anxiety, hoping for relief, and standing in the need of God. We make it our job to pass along an infusion of God news that's better than motivational memes. The support of listeners is what God uses to make this possible. When you know good news, you share it. So we do. When you hear this good news, you have the opportunity to share it. See? Lots of sharing. And this compassionate set of gifts started because listeners gave. Joy FM, family-friendly radio.
Here's today's message of good news. Instruct those who are rich in this present world not to be conceited or to fix their hope on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly supplies us with all things to enjoy. 1 Timothy 6:17.
He's the typical American male. He comes home, says hello, grabs a bite from the pantry, and then, what's he say?
Did you get the mail?
It's his little reward before dinner. And even though there's probably bills there just might be something good. You know, you can't guarantee something good every time the mail comes, but you can guarantee something good every time you turn on this station. Let it be your little reward, and send us something in the mail that would make both you
91.9 FM, Agate and Agania Heights, Guam, and KORU 89.9 FM, Garapan, Saipan. The time is now 6 o'clock.
Here's today's message of good news. Instruct those who are rich in this present world not to be conceited or to fix their hope on the uncertainty of riches, but on God,